Paul Freeman. Paul Freedman, welcome.
Thanks, Mark. I appreciate you. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I hear you great, and you look great. I think, Paul, you may get the award, and I'll ask my colleagues, as the best lit.
I want to apologize.
The best lit guest, wouldn't you say, John?
Fabulous producer, John Daly.
And I'm thinking
how
the
are you?
background, the aesthetic is working.
And look at how well he lit. It's no wonder he's a director and a filmmaker. Look
I got
at
the
him.
whole crew in here. Just Can
you drive over to Mark's house?
Yeah, could you drive over here and make me look better? All right, so Paul,
I'm a documentary filmmaker. I'm a bottom feeder in Hollywood, as you know. So,
well, it's funny. I always felt that if I were wealthy, I would put money into documentary filmmaking. It's a great way to tell stories, but as you sort of have just suggested, it's not a great way to make money. You sort of have to,
No.
But you really have to be driven, and clearly you were, to make this film that is so very revealing. Tell us about the movie.
Well, yeah, thank you very much for having me on. I appreciate any chance to talk about this issue. I've been a documentary filmmaker for a long time, and the bulk of my filmography is social justice films in places like Rwanda, Darfur, Eastern Congo, really looking into some of the dark corners of some of the bad stuff going on in the world, really trying to shine a light on human rights abuses and what we can do about them. Little did I know, well, I did know, I ignored for years the human rights abuses I was passing as I drove on the way to the airport to go to these places. And finally, I just said, as you just mentioned, the explosion of encampments in not just Los Angeles, but across the country. I mean, in Oakland and San Jose, San Francisco. And it just drove me to say, I just can't. Why am I going there when I should be here? So I set out and went down to Skid Row and talked to some people to try to get access, and decided to make a film about the folks there. And it was a transformative experience, as are all these projects. And what you find in these encampments, like you said, are a lot of surprises, a lot of beauty, a lot of resilience, a lot of hope, a lot of pain and suffering. And it's been quite a journey.
Paul Freeman, let me ask you, when you're down there and you're shooting this, The Dirty Divide, and you're talking to all of these people, and as you say, there are all of these revelations along the way. It leads me to a question. I hate questions like this, but I'm going to ask you anyway, and you can, you'll jujitsu it and make it workable. But give me a couple of the biggest surprises that you were struck by.
That's exactly what I hope the film rolls out, is how to myth bust, really, because I didn't know what to expect. I mean, I've always driven by these folks, and I see spectral figures. I see ghosts. I see faceless folks who are just, we don't have time for them. So I went into this, and before I could actually start shooting, Mark, I really had to. I was asked by the organization that allowed me access, which is the Los Angeles Community Action Network, or LA CAN, and they sort of. Before I could get access, they're located in Skid Row for 25 years. And before they would really let me, or for my own good, walk around the neighborhood with a camera, I really had to get trust. And so I walked around without a camera at first, then with a camera, then I turned the camera on. And it took months to really get some trust. So talking with them, we felt that the most valuable thing a film could do would be blow up three of the biggest myths around houselessness in this country. One is that everybody who's houseless is a drug addict. Everybody who's houseless. The second one is everybody's mentally ill. And the third is they all sort of come to LA because of the weather. And as I kind of bought into those ideas before. We blew up those myths. I say without a doubt that those are myths. Yes, there's mental illness. Yes, there is substance abuse. Absolutely. But perhaps the biggest surprise that I had was that I suffer from mental illness. I have depression. I take a little white pill every morning. I have a psychiatrist that I can afford. I have a nice home. I can go to sleep in my bed. I can lock my door. I can pull the blinds. I have a loving and supportive relationship with family and neighbors. My mental illness is treated. The mental illness that we see in the streets when folks are ripping their hair off and tearing their clothes off and howling at the moon, This is untreated mental illness without windows or doors, without shades they can pull down. So there's a big difference in what we experience, what we're seeing in the streets. And I say that because the evidence tells us from the point in time homeless counts that the rate of mental illness in the housed community is about the same as it is in the unhoused community. And the same goes for drug addiction and substance abuse. So these were myths that were absolutely exploded, surprised. We find that the number one cause of homelessness is housing unaffordability. The number two cause of homelessness is not drug addiction, it's housing unavailability. And the third is poverty. Just poor folks become homeless faster than anybody else. So that's really what the film's about, and those are my biggest revelations. It's a great question. Thanks.
I only have another minute or
Sure.
so, but and then we'll tell people where they can see the film and The Dirty Divide. Paul Freeman has put this. It's really an unvarnished look at this community. He's put it together, and when you're talking about the texture of this community, I think you're right. I think the sense that one has is it's drug-addled people with mental illness and the poverty thing. I always say that we're all just two, maybe one, but certainly two personal emergencies away from living in our car. I mean, I really believe that, but it's when you're secure, it always feels like, oh, those people over there. I really feel as though there's a greater fragility to life than we realize often. So your sense was it was that fragility that had sort of wrought a real horror on these people, and they end up in these encampments amid drug addiction and amid those who are, who have serious mental illness.
Absolutely. And I slept outside. I wanted to know what it felt like to sleep on that hard ground. I went out, I got a tent. I slept for a few nights out there. And I'll tell you, after the first night, when you don't sleep, you're scared. There's no place to pee or poop. Where do you get your coffee in the morning? I'll tell you, after a couple nights of that, you start feeling a little cuckoo. I can't imagine what it'd be like to be out there for weeks and months and years having to endure that and not having any resources. So if you ain't crazy when you get down there, it'll happen. So it's something that we really, the issue is really more about my perception of homeless people than homeless people there. They're trying to survive. They're not thinking about me.
I really love the name, The Dirty Divide, because it really kind of hits home that so many people think of it as us and them. And that there's no way you could ever end up like that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's a geographical location that the title comes from. LA Can's articulation of the Dirty Divide is Main Street that runs north and south through downtown Los Angeles. To the west of Main Street, you have folks living in lofts and lattes. And, it's beautiful. Flower pots on the corners, garbage cans, dog parks. To the east of Main Street, it changes drastically and profoundly. There's no garbage cans. There's no source of fresh water for a community of about 15,000 people. About 3,500 of them live directly on the sidewalk. There's no place to go to the bathroom. There's no source of fresh water. So it really is a divide right in the middle of the most affluent community perhaps in the country.
Paul Freeman, where can people see The Dirty Divide?
Well, we are just trying to get it released now. We're looking for people to pick it up. We're having a private screening literally this evening in Beverly Hills. So are you inviting
all my listeners to a private screening? Is that what you're telling me?
Yes.
Okay.
We're pretty sold out, actually.
Okay.
But if you go to my website, you have it up there at paulfreedman.net. We're going to start updating when folks can be able to see this. I hope it's out soon. We want to enter this conversation, particularly now, this political time in Los Angeles, when really we need solutions rather than hysteria, old ideas, more shelters. We need people to really start elevating this conversation because 5 homeless people a day die in Los Angeles County.
Wow. Well, we'll look forward to that, Paul. So it's all there at paulfreedman.net. Really cool for you to hang out. And we're getting questions about whether you sew because there's a mannequin that is like a dress sewing kind of mannequin behind. So, I mean,
no, I don't.
Okay, my viewers and listeners, we pay attention to every detail. So the best lit guest yet on the Mark Thompson Show. Great. Paul Freeman. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
All right.